All right, what is up? We had a little bit of a snafu and some technical issues. I went live on the wrong channel because I jumped the wrong studio. Thank you much to Jackie for pointing that out. So here we are live, TCR Live. Pretty sure on the right channel now. Finally, thank God. But we're going to get into the grades. And I also going to apologize. I'm having technical issues with my camera. It's lagging. I don't even know what's going on. But here's what I do know. The Cardinals won. They're 4-4. It was a really nice win. We're going to get into that. And, after, the Green Bay game, Cardinals fans were really kind of concerned, especially with how badly they lost. But they've got 2 wins in a row, another at 500. And, something I've been saying, if you look at most teams in the league, especially teams that, are kind of in the middle of the pack, teams with, let's say, 3 to 5 wins, most of those teams have 1 or 2 bad losses on the record if you look at it. So if you look, and I've done this, I've looked at those teams. So I wasn't as concerned. It's a high variance league. And, the Cardinals have some young players, and you're going to get that inconsistency. But it feels like they're starting to hit their stride. Hopefully, we saw some nice things, especially with the offense kind of putting things back together, Marvin Harrison Jr. So here's hoping that we can, string some things together from here. So we're going to get into the grades, obviously, and look at everything. Got a couple folks in the chat. Thank you for being here, Class Nest. What is up, Professor? Appreciate you being here, hanging out with us. Frank and Carlson. Carlson, what trade are we going for? That's a great question. There have been reports that Monty's been on the phones trying to make trades. I think obviously everyone thinks pass rusher is the primary place that, be looking to make a trade. And I really think that's the main place, maybe interior defensive line. But I don't think they're going to go after a cornerback. I think they're wanting to develop the young guys that they've got. I think bringing in another veteran is just kind of taking snaps away from, someone that you want to develop. And I think they've seen some things they like from their young guys. I don't think they'll go for anything on offensive line. They've got some decent play out of their backups. They've got some guys they want to get some snaps like Isaiah Adams. I don't think they'll go for another pass catcher. Maybe they haven't been playing great at, all year, but they've got guys they like that they're developing. Just when I look at this roster, the main place it looks like there's 2 places I really see potential for trades. First and foremost, edge rusher. Second, interior defensive line. So, I know Aziz Ojulari has been bantied about as a name, and that's certainly a possibility. I don't think we're going to see a big name pass rusher, but someone along those lines would certainly be nice. So we'll see though. Zach Felix, what's up, Professor? What's up, Professor yourself? Thanks for hanging out with us. Jackie, no, thank you for pointing that out. I started on the wrong channel, and boy, but thank you for letting me know about that. Agent 47, what's up, Joe? What is up with you, Agent 47? Appreciate you hanging out with us. King Plumtree, what is up? I still got your water bottle behind me. I hope they make a trade. Yeah, I hope they do too. I don't want to give up too much because I still feel like they're building through the draft, building for the future. But if they could give up like an early day 3 pick, like a 5th rounder, 4th rounder, even for a decent edge rusher, I wouldn't mind that. What's up, Marcos? Sorry. Hey, Joe. Can't wait for Saturday for the quadcast. Yes, I'm going to be jumping on with the Redbird Reboot podcast with Blake and Marcos, and also with Walter Mitchell. Will do the quadcast, have the team there together. So, Dana, outside of Blitz, we just aren't getting it done. I hope we do get an edge and wouldn't mind either piece for the middle for sure. 100%. So, all right, well, let's talk about the game, because this was I'm going to tell you, in that first quarter, we couldn't stop them, and it was a little rough. And, the Cardinals didn't put up any points in the first quarter, and I started worrying that this is a bad matchup. They've got so much speed, and, and we can't seem to stop them. And I had this bad feeling this game was going to get away with us. And then some things started to shift, right? The offense started moving the ball. The defense started getting a few stops, right? And obviously we know the outcome will win 28-27. Looking at the box score real quick, Kyler Murray, 26 of 36, 307 yards, 8.5 yard average, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, no sacks, 89.3 on the ESPN's QBR, total QBR, and then old school quarterback rating, 116.3. Just a really great game for Kyler Murray. And we'll see in the grades that reflected that. And the eye test was really there too. He was just making some really incredible plays. There's been a number of videos that looked at some of the throws that he made that are just really tough to make, where he just got him in just the right spot. That run at the end where it looked like everyone was going to tackle him, and he still managed to get that first down. Kyler Murray was balling. I mean, listen, anyone who watches my content knows that I am a Kyler Murray fan, Kyler Murray defender. I have kind of been stuck with him kind of throughout the whole, all the rocky times or whatever, in terms of, believing in him. And this is why, because he can do these kinds of things, and he makes some mistakes sometimes, but every quarterback makes some mistakes. And he looked good, and the numbers reflect that. The running game, wasn't all there. Connor, only had 53 yards, 2.7 yard average. It was a little rough, right? Rough going, running the ball, but they were able to pass the ball better than they have in quite a while. Trey McBride had a great game, 9 receptions, 124 yards. Marvin Harrison Jr., we saw what we all were wanting to see finally, right? With 111 and a touchdown. Real quick, AG4 said, yeah, sorry, it is freezing. I mentioned this at the beginning. I'm having some technical issues. I had them last week. I've been messing with this, trying to figure it out. I'm going to try to figure it out again this week. I don't know why that's happening. Sorry about that. Kyler had eyes in the back of his head. If he keeps that up, his game is going 100%, right? Nice game receiving there, right? There was the fumble that he had that he recovered. Cardinals, only got 1 sack. It was Dante Stills, right? Pass rush, we talked about being in need, right? No interception. So, but obviously Chad Ryland kicked that game winner, right? Dana's saying Marv didn't run 50% fade choice routes. I was shocked. Yeah. And I saw like the route kind of the graphic, and they had him doing a lot of a lot of crossing routes, which were really, really kind of effective. So it was nice to see that, right? So good game altogether. It was the return of Tua Tagovailoa, who didn't have a horrible game, but wasn't as good as Kyler, right? So altogether, really great game. Agent 47. I think Kyler's playing his best football in his career. Yeah, I mean, it's looking like it, and I think it's a really good system for him. When they get the route, when Petzing does a better job, in terms of the routes and the play calling, like I think he did today, right, for the receivers. But Kyler's balling, no doubt. So let's look at the grades offensively. All right. So at the top, you see Marvin Harrison, 89. Kyler's up there, 85.4. McBride's up there, right? So let's do what I like to do is we start with the offensive line. So we're going to sort it by pass block snaps to get them all at the top. Paris Johnson Jr. I mean, overall, the offensive line played pretty well. Tristan Colin was the lowest at 57.0. You see that they're doing what they've been doing for the last couple of games. They're platooning him and Isaiah Adams, right? And, getting them both some playing time. And I think that they're trying to probably ease Isaiah Adams in there, try to get him some snaps. And I think, we want to see him develop and become that starter. And he had a decent game. But we did see what we have seen with Isaiah Adams. He's grades better in the run blocking than the pass blocking. That has been the case. If you look at every one of his games, that he's been a little up or down. The pass block. In fact, you look at these games, last 3 games, he's had 20 to 26 snaps, pretty consistent. The snaps they're getting him, right? He had 6 snaps in week 2, but so these 3 games in a row, you see decent overall grade in mid 60s, right? That's not bad. Pass block, not the greatest grade. Run block, pretty good, right? So, that he had a really bad game last week with the pass blocking, right? The 30.4. But wait, this is what we're seeing. He's further along in the run and blocking than his pass blocking. You need to see him develop there. But the overall grade's not bad, right? For a rookie, that's not too bad, right? 67.1 overall grade. So, let's hope he can kind of, continue to play and if we can see some improvement in that pass blocking, if he can just get there on the pass block, because run blocking is already, decent, right? So going back, with the offensive line, Paris Johnson Jr., I feel like it broke a record in a good way. Another solid game for him, right? It wasn't his best game, but it was solid, 67.2, right? And that's what we've seen from him, very consistent week in, week out, right? He had one game that you could maybe call bad against the Chargers, right? 58.7, right? And that if that's his worst game, we'll take that, right? We're used to seeing some much worse games from offensive line, but look at this, just solid all the way, one rough game, 80 overall grade, right? He is continuing to show that he is your franchise left tackle, right? So solid game there. Froholt had a decent game. It was kind of average, it wasn't bad, right? Evan Brown had another good game, right? I think he had a good one last week too, right? I think this couple of good games in a row from him. Yeah, last week was even better. So good to see him. He started out well the first couple weeks, had a rough stretch you see in the middle, and he's kind of getting back up there. 66 overall grade, you'll take that, right, for the season. So again, we've talked about this was a nice signing. It's not a splashy signing, but he's kind of solidified one of those guard spots. He's better in the passing, the run blocking, but last 2 games in a row, solid, right? Beachum, another solid game from him, especially in the pass blocking, right? And Jonah Williams was spotted at practice, so we might be seeing him before long. But Beachum as a backup stepping in, he's experienced, right? So and then Colin did was better really good in the pass blocking, not so good in the run blocking. So overall, the offensive line though did a pretty solid job, right? It was decent, right? Ant, thanks for being here. Hey, what's up? Heard Monty is making some calls, possibly go for a pass rusher. I wonder who. Yeah, we talked about. I think probably before you got in that there's reports of that, and getting Aziz Ojulari is a name that I know has been kind of thrown out there. That'd be a really nice trade. Players like that. So we'll see, but they could definitely use the help, right? For sure. So offensive line. Solid game for them. This is what we're seeing most weeks. And just, I want you to remember back to the days of Billy Price, and poor Billy Price is catching strays here. But remember like how we'd have these weeks where just like bright orange and red and just really bad PFF grades. And, they're solid. Like, that maybe they're not, kind of, through the roof, but like, we're just not having those horrible weeks we were having before. We're having good, solid weeks most weeks, right? Or at least serviceable, and some weeks better than that. So it's an improvement. We want to see them get maybe a little bit better, raise, like they're fairly consistent. Maybe we want to see that consistency now just with a little bit better play. But listen, I overall, I'm happy with the development of the offensive line, and just, as some of the young players like Adams continue to develop, and Johnson, I think we'll see it continue to even get better. So moving up to tight ends, we saw Trey McBride at the beginning was one of the better grades, and Agent 47, it's great to finally have a solid offensive line. I would describe this offensive line as solid. It's not top of the league right yet, but it's solid, right? Which we haven't had in a long time. So Trey McBride, big game, over 100 yards, receiving. I think it was 9 receptions. Really nice grade, 79.8, right? So great game from him. Higgins, 19 snaps, not so ho-hum grade, right? And Ryman didn't have a great game. The passing grade and the run blocking weren't great. He was good in pass blocking, only 3 pass blocking snaps. The run blocking grade wasn't so good, which that checks out. Like we said, the running game, they didn't have a big day running the ball, right? James Conner struggled, and this is probably part of the reason. And, again, when you look at the offensive line, they were better in the pass blocking than the run blocking, right? Colin and Beachum weren't great, right? So, and Paris Johnson wasn't great. So on the run blocking side, so that checks out, right? Then, so we got the tight ends. Let's look at the receivers. Marvin Harrison, just such a great game, 89.0 overall grade. You saw that, that catch he made that they had to, have the replay to call it correctly, right? And just some other nice plays that he made. Dana's saying Zebra stole a TD from Higsy Bear, though. Yeah, that's fair. I think his grades would have only been a little bit better because that's one play, right? But that's certainly something to take into account. But Harrison Jr., just such a great game overall. Wasn't great in run blocking, but again, that's a theme for this game, right? But great game from him. Hopefully this is going to move us in the direction of, maybe seeing more of a connection with Kyler starting to develop. There was reports, during the broadcast that they spent some time together working on things, right? So, and that's a really good point. He was against, Jalen Ramsey, right? That touchdown was against Jalen Ramsey, if I remember correctly. That's no joke, right? He's playing against a really good cornerback and had a good game, right? So the degree of difficulty, you got to add that to that. So thanks for mentioning that. It's a really good point. Michael Wilson's grade was decent, right? 63.5. Greg Dortch's decent grade, right? Not well. I would decent might be over. Very average. Like 60 is like water level, right? So it wasn't bad. It was very much vanilla. Pascal, I mean, all the receivers. Zay Jones played, 17 snaps. All the receivers not named Marvin Harrison Jr. here, just kind of, so-so, right? And again, Harrison was the big difference maker, and that checks out, right? Couple, I think Wilson had a couple nice catches, right? But Harrison was the headliner when it comes to the wide receivers. Then going on to the running backs, right? Listen, it wasn't a great game running the ball, and the grades kind of reflect that Connor, had a 66 grade. So overall, so that was his run grade was 68.3. So, he, as is often the case, James Conner is running hard and making the most out of the situation, but it really does seem like the lack of rushing yards was more about the offensive line and the tight ends and the overall run blocking, right? In fact, the run blocking, if you look, no one graded well in run blocking except Isaiah Adams, right? So I think like James Conner, this isn't a super high grade, but 68.3 is decent. So I think he was, it wasn't him, I would say, right? And I think it was more the run blocking and maybe some things that they were doing on defensive schematically. But he did okay grade-wise. Trey Benson's grade, 60.3 was very right? DeMarcado didn't, looks like he didn't have any carries, I'm guessing because it's 62.5. Let's see if he had any rushing yards. Yep, no carries. So, the rushing game, offensive line or the blocking in general, everyone who's run blocking wasn't doing great, but the run, Connor's doing what he's doing. Benson had, I think, one nice run. It's not a great game for running backs. Got a question. Do you are you concerned about Trey Benson? We've talked about this before. Coming out of college, his kind of vision, ball carrier vision, and kind of in seeing blocks, that was the question. The physical tools and speed and all that and power was there. It's just that, and that's what we're seeing here. Do I have concern? Like, if you're looking for him to become the number one running back in the next year or two, or whenever James Conner moves on or retires, or whatever the plan is, you hope he can develop that, get better at that, because otherwise what he's going to be, he's going to break some runs, but unless something changes in his playing, he's not going to give us what Connor does. And what Connor does is, I would call it a high floor, where like, he's often going to get at least 2 yards in a play that for other running backs would be a 2-yard loss, because he's going to kind of make the most of even bad situations. And Benson has not shown that, right? What he has shown is a couple nice runs here or there when he gets clean lanes and things like that, and good blocks. So am I concerned? Like a little bit. I think Benson's good enough and talented enough that he's going to be useful in a running back room, but he's going to have to get better at that if he's going to be more than the number 2, right? So I'm keeping my eye on him. He's a rookie. He's got a lot of talent. He's got a lot of tools to work with. We'll see what happens, but I don't know how well that stuff develops, right? So maybe a little bit of concern. Yeah. So we got the running backs, not a great game for them, but then that's how the game was. But then we have our buddy Kyler Murray, 85.4 overall grade, right? His run grade was 63.2. It was just kind of okay. He had that one really nice run, but he wasn't running a lot besides that. He was not like some other games where he had some big runs. Right? Kyler had 5 rushes for 19 yards, 3-point yard average, 3.8 yard average, 7-yard long, right? It wasn't his best rushing game overall, but the one run he made when they needed it, right? Really, when it mattered, it was really good. But that passing grade, right? Really great game from Kyler. And let's look at the advancement stuff, right? So here he is overall, all of his games, and he's at an 81.7 overall grade, which is really, really good. So I like to look at, obviously, like the big time throws and turnover worthy plays. He had 3 big time throws. The only that's his tied for his second best, right? He had 3 against San Francisco. Now, of course, that game against the Rams, which was just next level. Like it was like someone was playing Madden on easy mode, right? He had 6 in that game, right? But he had 3 big time throws, right? Which is really nice. He's got 14, which I think is third in the NFL. I looked at it earlier today, but he's in the top 5 in that category. I think it's third if I'm not mistaken. He did have 2 turnover worthy plays. I think one of these is probably that fumble that he had and that he recovered. I'm not sure what the other one is. But so he did have 2 of those, right? But look at this. The average depth of target was up to 9.9. They were taking shots a little deeper than they have, that was the most since week 3 against Detroit, right? So it was nice to see them taking a little bit deeper shots, right? In this game. Time to throw. He had, which with deeper throws, you're going to have longer time to throw. 3.13. That was the longest time to throw since the Rams game, right? So, the offensive line was giving him time. He was making some time by, doing what he does, kind of extending plays. So, it was nice to see them taking some deeper shots and things like this, right? AZS, thanks for being here. Where is Kyler ranked in other QBs, PFF grade-wise? I want to say he's in the top 10. In fact, let's go look at that. By position, passer rating, quarterback. I was looking at today, and then we're going to do minimum dropbacks to the 20%, just so we're, including only people who've started some number of games. Kyler Murray is number 6 in passing PFF grade, that with a 78.6. I think with offense, he's tied for 6. So, yeah, I mean, he's up there, right? He is firmly in the top 10 quarterback, arguably top 5 quarterback, in terms of what we're seeing. So it's ranked 6 right now. I think when you look at ESPN with QBR and stuff like that, he's ranked in that top 5 or up there. So, man, Kyler's having a good season. The only thing Kyler doesn't rank high in, and this is something that he's never going to rank high in, I think, unless he really changes his play style and they change the offensive style, is passing yards. But he's never been that, right? He's been that guy who, and this is part of the offense because, he does run a bit, and then the offense tends to be more run heavy, and he's scrambling, and, he's a guy he might get you 2-3 passing touchdowns and 267 yards and be super, super efficient. But I'm going to tell you, that's not uncommon with running or quarterbacks that run really well. If you look at Lamar Jackson, this year, he's having a crazy year. He's on pace for a crazy amount of yards, and he's had good seasons. But you look at throughout his career, he's had one of his MVP seasons, he didn't even pass for 4,000 yards, right? So I know I'm going on a little bit of a tangent here, but with Kyler, if you're judging him by passing yards, you're looking at it the wrong way. Obviously you want him to have a decent number, but he's not going to lead the league in passing yards ever, but he might win an MVP someday by getting tons of touchdowns and being really efficient and making big plays and running the ball really well in addition to throwing. But I digress. But yeah, he's grading really well. So, obviously we love seeing that. So that's the offensive side of the ball. Overall, listen, it was really nice to see the offense kind of get going get going in the second half, right? That because this team, has struggled in the second half, right? They put up some points early and then they kind of stopped putting up points, right? Well, this time they didn't put anything up in the first quarter and then they started scoring. So really nice to see them. So let's shift over to the defensive side of the ball. On the defensive side of the ball, we have at the top, we got Victor McKay on 20 snaps, really nice grade, good in coverage, good across the board, except the run defense was kind of okay, just okay, right? Jesse Luketa graded 90.5 on 15 snaps, right? Really good in run defense and also in coverage. So, those are some of the highlights down at the bottom. Starling Thomas didn't have a great game, right? Tonga didn't have a great game. So, but let's go ahead and let's sort it by, I think we'll sort it by position here. And let's I like to start with the defensive backs, right? The coverage unit. So Garrett Williams, for whatever reason, they haven't listed as strong safety, I guess, based on where he lined up. I don't know. They just go based on snap counts, but we know him as a slot corner. But, his grade was decent, right? 65.8, 67.1 coverage grade. He's been solid this year, right? He's been our best cornerback. And, he's had a rough game against Detroit. But aside from that, look at that. Just very consistent, right? In those 60s with the game in the 70.1 overall grade. 73.6 coverage grade. Like that is really, really good play there. Hope to see him to continue to develop, right? Just such a great addition with that third round pick or last year. Jalen Thompson, not his best game overall. We had good tackling grade. Coverage was a little bit low, right? So he had some good games in a row. We were looking at him, he had his games were getting better. This was a little bit of a step back for him, but well, hopefully he can, have more good games than bad games moving forward. Going on to, let's see, getting the other cornerbacks. Starling Thomas, you mentioned, he had a rough game, right? 42 coverage grade, 39.7 overall grade. Wasn't great in the tackling side, so really not a good game for him. Look at Max Melton. It was not the great game, a little below average there. It was better than his last game, though, right? Last game was really rough for him. He had a 28.3 coverage grade last game. Cringe emoji, right? So, he's been very up and down, but more down than up. So we want to see him kind of, put together some good games, right? The second round pick that we're hoping can earn that starting job. So, it wasn't his worst game, but it was kind of right? Buda Baker, as Buda Baker goes, it's not a great game, 63.3, but we know what he does, and he's who he is, and it wasn't his best game, but it was okay, right? Rabbit had 6 snaps, graded very average there on those 6 snaps, right? So that's our coverage units, right? So let's look at the inside linebackers now. We have Chris Barnes, not a great game for him, only 9 snaps, but the grades weren't great, right? Let's see. Owen Papo on 8 snaps played really well. And I'll tell you, I don't usually go over the special teams grades, but he graded really well on special teams as well. Really high grade there. But, on 8 snaps, limited snaps, but graded really well there. Kaiser White didn't have a great game. He was good in coverage, but not great against the run. He had a good game last week. He's been struggled early, right? And had a really good game last week, back to not being a great game. So hopefully we can see him, kind of get a little more consistent on the good side of things. But, not his best game, but he was decent in coverage. Then from there, we're going to get to we'll go to the edge rushers, linebackers. Ava saying, I can't wait to move off Kaiser. Yeah, I'd love to see them develop someone to take that spot, right? For sure. Oh, wait. And I guess Mac Wilson, they've got him as an outside linebacker here, but even though he's more of I think of more middle linebacker, but they move around, so I'll mention him. And he had a nice game, right? 66.1. This has been such a good signing for them. He has been the stable kind of person there in the middle there, and just made a lot of nice plays. Just another really good signing for this team, right? So we got Zayvon Collins didn't have a great game. In fact, it's one of his worst of the season, right? In fact, was it his worst? Let's take a look. It was not his worst. His worst was LA, oddly enough. But this was his second worst game. He's still having a good season, 72.6, best PFF grade of his career. His run defense and coverage in particular really good. It's just the pass rush he's struggling with, right, in terms of those grades, right? And that's been something we've talked about, worrying about him, and hopefully he develops that move, right? So, yeah. Saying they need to give it to. I'd love to see Zayvon Collins back on the inside, right? Him and Mac Wilson Jr. Senior, but they are not doing that, so I don't know. So he had a rough game, but Dim Casey had a nice game. His pass rush grade was decent too. He had 2, pressures, right? Really good in coverage on limited snaps there, but solid overall. So overall good on limited snaps, mind you, but nonetheless. Okwara had another, great. This is a deal with Okwara, and we're seeing this every week, almost every decent grade, not a lot of pressure. that's and so it's like he's doing good in the run, I think, is really kind of the deal, but not getting a lot of pressure. Like if you look at it, I mean, he's had a couple low games, but you see there's like all these games in the 60s and 70s mixed in there. But the pass rush grade, is occasionally decent with it, but like 3 pressures. So he's just, been much better in the run, and overall you look at it, like the run defense 74.7 is kind of the main thing. So, he's playing solid against the run, but he's not giving them what they really need. And that's, some juice in the pass rush, right? Um, what are we talking about? Mac Wilson. Let's get the rest of the outside backers, and then we'll go to the defensive line. Jesse Luketa, right? Nice game from him. Not the pass rush grade wasn't great, but as the run stopping was really good. The coverage is good. 15 snaps. So Luketa has some nice games. Doesn't give him a lot in the pass rush, but yeah, Zay. ACL saying Zaven's run defense is and his coverage, right? Like for a linebacker, he's in both those areas, run defense and coverage. He is really good, right? So, like he's a player you want to keep. I just hope they use him more inside, right? But yeah, Xavier Thomas, a rookie that I think he was a 5th rounder, pass rusher that we've been hoping to see more from him. His grade was very mediocre, no pressures, but he got 13 snaps. At least it's good to see him on the field. Maybe hopefully he can kind of develop a little bit. And then going back and looking at the actual defensive linemen, right? Dante Stills had a nice game, right? And he had the 1 sack, 71 grade, 72 point in his pass rush grade. He has, we really liked him last year. And and he was a steal in the 6th round. To get a 6th rounder who's playing, and that's a plus, right? So he's a nice piece, for that rotation. But he has struggled this year. He's been consistently in the 50 to 60 range. Not great, but nice to see this game. But that's kind of, he was a little bit like that last year. You look, his 59.3 last year. So I would like to see him string together some more good grades and some good games with good grades and kind of see some improvement. But it is nice to see him in the lineup. He missed a game, I think, or two, but for a 6th round pick, if nothing else, is a rotational piece, right? Let's see. Dane is saying grade may have been bad, but did you see all Saban running with one of Miami's 2 big receivers? Darn you, correct. Yeah. I mean, and that's a good point. You have to also remember degree of difficulty, right? And sometimes, and his coverage grade was was decent. Well, 63.5. It's not as good as we're used to seeing from him, but it's not bad, right? On 4 snaps, coverage snaps. So, yeah. So let's see. We were at Dante Stills. Nice game for him. Hopefully he can string some more of those together. Tonga didn't have a great game. He had a nice game last week. Wasn't great this week. He's good in tackling, but run defense or pass rush, right? Naquan Jones. I talked about him before, right? Okay game, right? 62-2, like compared to Tonga, not bad, right? And this is a guy I'm hoping he can keep it going because, like, he's a rotation guy, right? He is a backup nose tackle who you want to play 15 to 20 snaps, right? But if he could, and he's still youngish, 26.7, right? 26.7 years old. But you look at it, like, he's had a nice, this is a guy who you have to understand. This is a guy who's kind of like throughout his career been more of a March bubble player on the roster, practice squad player. In fact, if you look at his career grades, let me show you here. 21, 22, and 23, like in the 40s. That's not good, right? Decent tackling grades last couple of years, but not good anywhere else, really, right? So, like, this, when I say this is a guy who has historically been kind of a practice squad kind of guy, roster bubble guy, that's what I mean, right? And not trying to have any slight on him, but just his grades have shown over his first 3 years, play, that he wasn't a guy you really want playing a lot, right? A depth guy. But this year he's shown a little more, right? 67.6 is a really nice grade overall, right? So, it's limited snaps, but again, nose tackle is kind of, more what he is, right? Interior defensive lineman. Those guys rotate and get limited snaps. Now, this was fewer snaps than he had this is the least number of snaps he's had in an event game, right? But nonetheless, this is just keep watching this guy, right? I'm not saying he's going to be a world beater, but if he can develop into a decent rotational defensive lineman, like, that's a win. Like, this is a guy that you didn't use a draft pick on. He was an undrafted free agent in 2021. You signed him as a free agent. Last year he was with them for a while. Obviously Monty's time in Tennessee is where he knew him from. That's kind of why he's here, I'm assuming. But, if a guy like this can become a nice, solid depth piece on that defensive line who you rotate in for 15 to 20 snaps and he gives you good play, if you're getting that out of a guy you picked up this way, that's a win. So I'm keeping an eye on him. He's made some nice plays, right? So we got Naquan Jones, nice game there, or decent game, right? Collier, this is who Collier is. Like he's, former first round pick he's healthy. That's what we can say for him. His grades are, they're never great, right? Throughout his career, they've never been great. That's who he is. He's a guy who had potential, but he was a reach as a first round pick. I think that was pretty widely agreed upon when he was drafted by Seattle in the first round. But it's what you get from him, right? A grade in the 50s. We know who he is at this point, unless something significant changes. And then Ben Stilley, he had some nice plays here and there. His grade was kind of okay. I think he did he have a better game last week? I think it was, a little bit better last week. This is a 2022 undrafted free agent. He is who he is. He's just kind of a rotational piece. If he can develop into something, that's nice. But so that's kind of what we got on the defensive side. So overall, the defense struggled at points, right? But they kind of locked it down a little bit more later in the game. Real quick, looking at Miami's grades, right? On offense, A-Shane had a great game, right? Their center, they're off, then their guard, some offensive linemen up there. Dwayne Eskridge, nice grade. Tyreek Hill, okay grade, right? Decent. Mostert, okay. Tua, 65, right? 70.3 passing grade, okay, right? Down here at the bottom, their tight ends were kind of at the bottom there of the grades, right? Odell Beckham Jr. We've got an Odell Beckham Jr. sighting, okay. But it was, their grades were okay. On the defensive side, their grades aren't great, but we had a nice offensive game, so that's telling, right? The Kendall Fuller cornerback had a nice game. Calais Campbell, love Calais Campbell, right? Jordan Brooks, but the defensive line struggled down here. The cornerbacks, so that's what we see from them. So then, finally, last thing I like to do is look at the overall lineup and see how it's looking, right? Send a 6-26 for Calais. Oh man, I'd love to see him back. He would be such a help. I don't know. That'd be interesting to see if they'd be up for moving him, right? It'd be nice to have him back. So looking at the Cardinals overall grade on the offensive side, this is solid, right? We've seen, Harrison's grade coming up, right? And McBride and, Connor Murray's, maybe went down a little bit that game, but, he some solid green there. Want to see Wilson, Dortch continue to bring those grades up. But that offensive line, right? We talked about it, solid, right? Solid. Not the best in the NFL. Not a top 10, right? But it's solid, right? It's definitely in top half of the league, in my opinion. And I think if you went and looked at all the offensive line grades, it's probably, when you just eyeball, probably somewhere in that middle of the pack, a little bit above middle of the pack, right? Solid play. And, if we get Jonah Williams back and he plays like he was playing during the season, could be even better, right? So yeah, and that speaks to the depth, right? We lost 2 starting offensive linemen. The starting right side is gone, and the guys that have stepped in have been solid. That's not something we've had in the past, right? So on the defensive side, this has been the weaker side of the ball. Demi Casey's popping in there with that 91.4. So that looks really good on limited snaps, but nonetheless, cornerbacks not looking great with Melton in there. But it is what it is. It's a work in progress. We'll go to the nickel, and that's where they bring in, Collins over there and next to Williams and some different names on there. So, the defensive side, we need to see those grades get a little bit better, but the offensive side looking solid. So that is the game that was. Nice game, nice win for the Cardinals. Here's hoping they can pull off another nice win against the Bears coming up. So, all right. Well, that's what we got for this week. I appreciate y'all hanging out with us. Appreciate all the comments in the chat. I'm going to put up the shout outs for the channel members, and then we're going to get out of here. I hope you all have a great week and safe Halloween. Enjoy the spooky season. See you later. Peace.
Hey, yo, it's Joe. He's the host of Mock Draft Monday on the Cardinals Show. So join the live, hit like and subscribe. Enjoy the podcast tonight. Enjoy the podcast tonight.